you say, how am I? I'm learning every day. No, that's what I would say. I'm definitely learning every day. There's been so much, and some days are Netflix days, and some days are woohoo, let me grab life by the proverbials and get on with it. But yeah, it's today. Today is a good day.
Yeah, and I suppose I'd be very remiss if we didn't go back a little bit, because I saw on your bio that you had a career in the music industry, and that's as you said, many years ago. What was the pivot for you? Because one of the themes has been pivoting, where people just change, sometimes because of pandemic, because we had to. But what was the change that moved you from one industry to another to where you are now?
I suppose I went from music industry. I was in London, and I worked for Elton John, and phenomenal experiences in life, and very grateful for them. They've got me to where I am now. But I had moved back from London to Dublin, and there was nothing within the industry back here. So I got a job I saw an ad in the Times for charity manager for the Ronald McDonald Children's Charity. And I do laugh to this day. I think the only reason I got the interview, because I had no experience in not-for-profit, was because of what my CV looks like. And I think they went, Jesus, we'll get her in just to have the chats with her. So anyway, I got the job, and it was brilliant, and I loved it. It was in a funny way, even though I was paid, it was very entrepreneurial, because I was coming up with the ideas to raise the money to get the house built in Crumlin Children's Hospital. But I was housed in the McDonald's head office. And when the house was built, McDonald's Corporation offered me a job as communications manager. And I went, sure, there's a great job. McDonald's, brilliant employer. What I learned very, very quickly is I'm not a good employee at all. And I'm definitely not a corporate employee. So, rolling quickly on, I did it for a few years, had the kids, got completely and utterly burned out, trying to maintain this. And I think, and I'm not trying to be gender specific, but I think women have a tendency to do this when they have children and they're working as well, is they want to put their best self forward in their work, their best self forward as a parent, as a mother, running the house. And you're putting all these extra things into your pot of life, but you're not taking anything out. And I see it time and time again. And I got burnt out. Chronically burnt out. So I left McDonald's, went to college one day a week, did counseling and psychotherapy. And I've kind of added onto it since. But I suppose the biggest pivot in my business in the last 12 months is I would have traveled quite a lot to the States and to Europe in speaking. To companies about burnout. So come March, all my speaking gigs got cancelled. Just, like a lot of people. And I thought, okay, so I can still do my one-to-one coaching work. I can do that via Zoom. But actually, by the end of March, people were coming back to me going, can you deliver this online? So I then went, okay, there's a challenge. So I created not just the one-off workshops, but a series of 4 events. So I would get a company to buy into that. So it was getting me more work, and I was able to have it recorded. It was an asset for the company. And so instead of just going, well, there's a bit of my business that's gone, I found a way, as a lot of people have, of going, how can I make this work? Because I need to bring the income in.
I think we're all definitely identifying what you said there, that from a personal experience came the opportunity. I think many people in the room will have set up their business because of a problem they encountered themselves and they had a solution or developed a solution to it. So you mentioned burnout, the phrase, and you very honestly said that was something you experienced. So you might tell us a little bit about the 12-week to a calmer you and the process and the book. How did that come about?
I'm very honest. I'm always very honest. I had done a vision board, and I'm not that much, as I call it, a tree hugger therapist. And anyone who knows me knows I'm very practical. I'm very much about living in the real world. But I had put up on my vision board, along with a very big house and a nice car. They haven't materialized, but that's work in progress. That I wanted to write a book, and I wanted to work on a TV series or documentary within my field. And genuinely, within 20 minutes, I had 2 phone calls. One from my phone has just gone up. Siri, stop it. Sorry. I got 2 phone calls. One from Gill Publishing to ask me would I like to write a book on burnout, because they'd seen a few articles that I contributed to and done sound bites for. And then the other one was from the producers of the documentary Stressed, who asked me would I work with them. And I worked on both of them at the same time. And what I loved about the TV documentary, and it kind of fed into what I was doing with the book, was the TV documentary, which was a 2-part, wanted to show how stress could be reduced, extreme stress could be reduced in prevention. So everything that was done, and that brings me back to the point about the book, is that at the moment, the World Health Organization referred to burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And that was changed in 2019. And I remember going, oh, it's still not going to be taken seriously. It's not a medical condition. And actually, I'm really glad it's not a medical condition, no, because as everybody who's watching this or watches this on replay, anyone who's experienced it in mild forms or in chronic forms, burnout is not recovered from with medical intervention. It is recovered and managed by lifestyle changes. So popping pills, yes, maybe in certain elements, but as an overall, how we manage ourselves is paramount to how we manage our preventing getting burnt out, because we can be burnt out by external factors, but also by internal factors.
I think you're so right there, and I think one of the biggest pressures, and I think it's amplified by our necessity to stay connected digitally, because that's all we've had. Mm-hmm. But I think, wasn't it in 2017, France passed the El Khomri law, the right to disconnect. So meaning that employers can't expect employees to respond to emails, etc., out of certain hours. That can't be fixed by pills, as you said. You know, there are lifestyle changes that we can make. And whether they're legalized as France did, or we just say ourselves, this is something we're going to do, is put the phone away, no phones in the bedroom, whatever it may be. What's your thoughts on that, Siobhan?
Oh, I completely agree. And, you know, just as you were talking, you know, I think the last 12 months has been so difficult because we haven't had things to distract us. So we have had all this time to work on our business, to figure out how to pivot, to put all this time, you know, to open the laptop or the phone at 10 o'clock at night, or I'm watching Netflix, so I'll just have a look at this, or I'll just search this up. So because we haven't been going to the movies, or we haven't been going out for dinner with friends, we haven't had those outside distractions that we live with. And I remember doing a talk down in Cork last January. And I was standing there, and I have a big thing about self-care versus self-kindness. And, you know, self-care over the wellness industry has made millions out of this. Self-care, you know, getting your nails done, going for a round of golf, going to the pub for a pint. I remember standing there going, imagine, I mean, this is horrific. Imagine a world where we didn't have any of that. And you had to actually create your self-kindness from internally. Well, lo and behold, 2 months later, that's what we were left with. And we haven't learned how to do that. We have spent between getting kids to football, GA, you know, hurling practice, matches, cooking dinner, seeing friends, always saying yes, not having boundaries in place. We haven't actually learned how to sit with ourselves. And the thought pretty much terrifies most people, myself included, is, you know, it's not easy, and our brains can go into some dark places in that. So, you know, pulling back into how do we manage ourselves in not scrolling all the time, doom scrolling, as I think they're calling it now, it is about becoming very boundary driven. My phone pretty much stays on do not disturb all the time, even through the day. but I have it activated that I think it's at 8 o'clock, it goes into nighttime mode. So that and that's especially because my kids are upstairs and they're generally texting me from upstairs to downstairs for food. Because, that's the reality of life. You're trying to juggle all of these balls. And actually a lovely way of looking at it, Noel, is imagine you're juggling 4 or 5 or more balls. And I think as entrepreneurs or business owners, we take on board that all of them are glass balls and we have to, keep it really tight and our bodies get clenched up, making sure we don't drop any of them. But what if we gave ourselves the ability to go, do you know what, I'm going to put that one down. And I'm actually, it doesn't mean I'm not going to deal with it ever again. I'm just going to put it down and concentrate on 2 or 4. And, if that means I'm going to close my computer down, if that means I'm going to stop scrolling on the phone, whatever it is, it's about going, I can come back, I can take something out and put something back in. It's a state of flux. We're not in this very rigid mindset. And I know I'm on a roll now. It's because as well, we strive so hard for work-life balance, and work-life balance does not exist at all. And we actually exhaust ourselves trying to get to this work-life balance place, utopia, that the wellness industry is trying to get us to. But actually, if we see it as counterbalance, so that there will always be a time where work, whether you're launching a project, you're working hard on pivoting your business, you're doing something, work goes up here and other stuff drops down, the scales drop down. And then you have to take a break. So your personal life, minding yourself, has to come up. So we're constantly in flux, constantly, never there, ever.
There's a great friend of the local enterprise office in Kildare is Blaise Brosnan. And Blaise, there's time management sessions that are often run. And Blaise has often said there's no such thing as time management. It doesn't exist because you can do nothing about time. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
It's event management. And I always remember that. And that's many, many, many years ago, that it's down to how you manage the events in your life to create more time. And I think that resonates there where you said about the balance and we're always in flux. It's in our capacity to manage those pressures. And headspace is something, as you said there, and I think this needs to be rewound back and addressed. Being comfortable within our own selves, that it doesn't scare us with our own thoughts. And the reason I say that is we forget the mind is a muscle, isn't it? Like we see people join up for gyms and we forget that the mind is a muscle that needs to be exercised and looked after like anything else. What is your advice? And by the way, I'm going to give a quick shout out to the people in the room before I ask you that question. So Claire Ward is saying hello. No, how are you, Claire? Tara Lane is saying happy Monday, everyone. It's great. Claire came back there, loving Siobhan already. This was only at 6 minutes past, Siobhan, so you're doing well. Only 6 minutes in, saying you were so positive. Mairead Carroll is saying, good morning, everyone. This is my first coffee morning. Mairead, you're very, very welcome. Tara is saying, and the reason I highlight this, Tara is amplifying what we're talking about. She goes, sorry, everyone, for having my camera off. I don't mean to be rude. My Wi-Fi isn't great. And with 3 children doing school, the Wi-Fi is under huge pressure, so I'm trying to save it. And there's an example of, we often use the phrase working from home. Many of us are parenting from work as we are now at home. So Siobhan, your advice, you mentioned 12-week, a formula to improve your well-being and your headspace. Any tips for those in the room? And by the way, if anyone's any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll take them. But Siobhan, your tips, what would they be?
Tips. Well, you know what, for anyone who is feeling, I think this is really important. Anyone who is feeling that maybe they are at this stage starting to feel burnt out, speak to somebody. That's the first. Emergency schooling. I can see that. Yeah, emergency schooling. I'm applying the same thoughts to that. We're not great at admitting something and admitting to somebody else. But if it's just more about prevention and it's just about what can I do myself, the 4 pillars, you can look at all the other stuff and you can go, oh, I'm going to do a course on mindfulness, or I'm going to do a journaling. There's a journaling webinar. I'm going to do that. That's great. That's what I call the fluffy pillows. And I'm a mindfulness teacher as well, so I'm not undermining it. I journal, I do all of that. But you need to address your 4 pillars. So you're going to think of the 4 pillars as the 4 corners of your bed. If you think of making your bed and you've got that ridiculous fitted sheet and you got 3 corners of your fitted sheet on and one of them keeps pinging up because it doesn't, eventually you give up, you go, oh, I'm not even going to deal with it. You put the duvet on, you get into bed that night, and yeah, you're going to sleep, but you're still aware that the bottom sheet is crinkled. Imagine you had all 4 really tight. Those 4, the mother of all your pillars: sleep, nutrition, exercise, which I don't call doing star jumps around your living room. I call it intelligent exercise. And then your clutter. And your clutter is really important. It's not just the clutter around you. And if, as some people are, having to work from their bedrooms, as well as maybe the kitchen table or shuffling around the place, your clutter is also relationships or people. So it is toxic relationships and your working environment. But the reason sleep is really important, it's exactly as you just said, Noel. Your brain is a muscle. So why do we think if you go to the gym or you go for a run or you exert yourself and you're told rest the next day, that's how you repair your muscle? Well, you've got to repair your mind and your brain. So sleep is paramount. It is the most. And with sleep, it won't make all the stuff you have to do tomorrow go away, but it helps your cognitive reasoning in being able to manage your events, not your time management, the next day. It also, good sleep gives you the energy to do your exercise, get out for your walk. It also means that you're going to make better food choices because you're not craving sugary food for energy to keep going, because then you're in your vicious cycle. So they're your 4 to go.
Yeah, and I threw them up because, you know, if there was 4 simple things to address, like our mobile phone does not work unless it's plugged in and recharged, and it's like a body part when we don't have it. You know, we leave the house, we realize 300 yards up the road you forgot it, you will go back for it because you can't live without it. It's one of these necessities, and yet if it's not charged, it's useless. Same as ourselves. So as you say, sleep, we need to recharge, and nutrition. It's what fuels us. You know, that's it. So why would you put bad fuel? You wouldn't put contaminated fuel into your car to travel. So think about ourselves. And exercise. And I think that is one thing. If there's been one silver lining from COVID, is people have said, I've got 5K that I can walk in, but by God, I'm going to use it. And they're getting out of the house and walking. And we can see that has been a massive improvement. But I want to go to the last one again, because I think it's such a strong one. And no one would have thought it would have become one of the pillars. If we were asked to guess, we probably might have guessed sleep, nutrition, and exercise. But clutter, it's a fantastic word, isn't it? Would you expand a little bit more on the things that clutter up our business lives, our personal lives, our home, that get in the way?
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, what's really important with this, and I just want to say this, is just flipping back to burnout just for 1 minute. Burnout, when it originally came out in the 1970s, it was very much around, it was referred to people who worked in the quote unquote caring professions. So your healthcare workers, everything that we're seeing right now. But what I've realized very much over the last year is burnout, doesn't matter your profession, burnout it affects people who are emotionally invested in what they do. So if you're emotionally invested, as most business owners are, because they're not waiting for the paycheck to bounce into their accounts every month from somebody else, so that's why there's a higher risk for self-employed people to get burnt out if they're not minding themselves. So that's why it's very easy to get so focused on your work and your business that you allow clutter, the physical clutter, to build up everywhere around you. What happens when we're in a cluttered environment, and this is not about being minimalist or anything like that, but what happens when we're in a physically cluttered environment is that basically filters back into our brains, because then our brains get cluttered. We don't know where to start. Everything seems like, should I work? Should I clean the dishes? There's no order. And then that affects, we start to get overwhelmed. And it's just little bit by little bit by little bit. If we look at it from relationships and friendships, and I think this has been a really interesting time because COVID has enforced us to step away from a lot of relationships and friendships that we would have been tied into, that we mightn't necessarily have wanted to continue. And it'll be really interesting, you know, in 6-12 months time, as we come out of this serious, and we learn to live with COVID in a very different way. What relationships do we come back to? Because I think what I'm seeing is that people are clinging on to relationships, tribes like this, where they're hanging out with, whether it's online, but like-minded people. So people who are supporting you and who are giving you help and listening to you, rather than hanging out with maybe your old tribe where people are going, why are you going into business on your own? Why are you doing this? Why? So that's clutter, because that also then has a negative effect. You're then doubting yourself. You're constantly having to get into conversations where you're justifying your actions and what you're doing. So it's both sides. It's, you know, a cluttered environment. Now, again, as I said, one of the things, and this ties into the top two, clutter and sleep. I remember seeing a amazing army. He was a Navy SEAL, and he did a TED talk on the benefits of making your bed first thing in the morning. It's what they instill into the Navy SEALs. So I have a thing, whereas the minute my feet touch the bedroom floor, I make my bed before I leave the bedroom. So and what that means is that every time I go back into that room, there is a sense of achievement. Doesn't matter what hasn't happened that day or has happened or whatever. I've done one thing. So my room is clutter free. I've got that done. But that prompts you to then do the next thing and the next thing. So sometimes when it's just all too much, it's about just starting with the small things.
Yeah, it's super to hear you say that as well. I remember that TED talk. It's a great one. I'll dig out the name of it there and we'll pop it through. Eileen has just said, yeah, same as Tara, working from home and managing the kids. I set them on a treadmill. And she said, I'm not going to show that on the live screen. But great listening to Siobhan, and thank you for that. Brenda has said that I think the clutter is lethal. It is to-do list monkey that you carry around with you. And it's great to identify that, because you can't change anything until first you become aware of it. So while having that list there, it's nice to know some of the areas, and it can become, I think, listening to you there, Siobhan, overpowering, but it's those little small things that we can do that make a difference. Getting up, making the bed, you know, it's a sense of achievement. Yeah. About the tribe, I think really interesting. What I picked up there reminded me of a saying that I heard from a leadership point of view. You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Yeah. So let's improve the people we surround ourselves with. And it's great to see 30 people in the room today, and we'll have the opportunity to network and ask questions and challenge one another later on. So thank you for that. Peter Mann is in. Well done. I mentioned it, and Peter's helping us out. Admiral McRaven is the guy's name. Make My Bed, a great book, and here's the TED Talk. And Peter, phenomenal. Thank you very much for throwing that into the chat. There's my little to-do list, is to rewatch that when we come back. Siobhan, just before I continue with yourself, I'm going to bring Aoife in, because one of the little things that we're doing, and I urge everyone to do this each week, if there's one small thing you can do, is keep an eye on the Local Enterprise Office website. And Aoife, one of the big programs that has appeared since last week is the Aldi shop experience and talk. So if I scroll on down, I might get you to explain this one. So Grow with Aldi program, information seminar. It's this Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this Wednesday.
10 until 12. I would have made the mistake in thinking that this wouldn't be for me if I wasn't a food producer, but that's not the case. Sure, it's not.
No, so this year, they announced this year that it's now open to businesses with different products. So you know yourself, if you're in Aldi, you have those baskets with, you could have candles in it, you could have towels, a lot of random different things there. So they kind of thought this year that they're going to open up the original Grow with Aldi food program to whatever different products are out there. So we're hosting an information seminar on Wednesday, and we have someone from Aldi who's going to be at that to kind of go through the application process, how it works and what you can expect. So we just said it was worth mentioning today. It's a fantastic opportunity. I know last year, Pro Culture Kombucha, which is a business from Salons in Kildare, they were successful. So they have their products now in 145 Aldi stores nationwide. So it's definitely a good opportunity. So you're more than welcome to join us on Wednesday.
That's super, and it's such a great initiative. And I know of few people that have engaged with Aldi, and they can't speak highly enough about the support that we're getting. So anyone in the room, this could be one of the declutters for this week. Is there's something to focus on rather than something else. So thank you very much for that, Aoife. I really appreciate on that one. No Siobhan, I'm going to ask you pitfalls. So as well as knowing the things we should do, so those 4 pillars, what are pitfalls that we should watch for that get in the way, that become impediments to looking after those 4 pillars?
Not being able to say no, which is a great one. Getting lost down the phone, scrolling away. I myself, was it last week? Yeah, Monday and Tuesday last week, I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't get out for my walk early in the morning, and I got from Sunday to Wednesday and I hadn't left the house. And I think I'm not the only person who can say that, because I got really ahead of myself and I went, I have this organized. I didn't put it in my calendar. So I have a certain time that I put in my calendar to go for my walk every morning. Now, that may change because another meeting, that's the only time that other meeting can come in. So I will be flexible. And I think that's important, is to be flexible. But if you're going, I'll put all the meetings in the world before me getting out for my walk or me doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm down the bottom of the pile, because that's what we do. We put ourselves right down, is you're going to get to the end of the week and have done nothing for yourself. And I remember when I was training for psychotherapy training, and one of the lecturers said, your self-care is really important. Now, the boys would have been tiny, remember, single mum. And she said, what you need to do is, you need to be able to take a bath and light candles. And I sat there looking at her going, does she have any idea what my life is with 2 toddlers, having a bath and having candles? Didn't get it. Couldn't get my head around it. Roll on 12 years later. If I don't have that walk in, I am going to spiral into putting everything else before my self-care and my self-kindness. The other one is that, and I think as well, we have to be very mindful within tribes and within the social media world, that we have been catapulted to the extent we're in, of comparison. That, when we compare ourselves to others, they're doing great things. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm procrastinating. I'm not, I'm just, we're going to then literally be paralyzed. Then the self-doubt, then the inner critic, then we're down a slippery slope. So don't compare yourself to anyone. Your ability to do what you're doing in the here and now is all that matters, not what somebody else is doing. because that's where we will get burnt out. That's where we will realize, and then we'll fall out of love with what we do. And that's what I was saying about that when you're emotionally invested in what you do, you give it your all. But
yeah, and I think saying no is a big. I think that it's very nice to shine a spotlight on that as on something that we can all do. It's okay to say no to certain things and give ourselves a bit of space. Claire was mentioned there in the chat that she's a home-based business, and that is clutter for her. So, and that's really difficult where we're all working from home at the moment, trying to separate that from normal home life as a parent, as a housemaker, and as a family leader, whether it be a parent or guardian. Really, really tough. So it's nice to know that we all feel that same way, and then we can do something about it. The Cahill family is here. In 2020, I learned to say no, and it transformed my life. I've never been happier. And it's great to hear that affirmation that it works. And small little silver lining from COVID, because we've had to say no, to some things that were taking up valuable time and headspace. Christine is saying, loving the phrase to say no tactfully is a great tool. Yes, there's a good one. Has anyone any advice on how to say no tactfully? I think being honest is the most important thing, Siobhan, isn't it?
Yeah, but we don't have an issue with saying no. We can all say no. Do you know where our issue is? Our issue is the guilt that we feel by saying no. That's our problem, because we then go into, oh, they won't like me, or oh, they won't ask me to do that again, or will I lose business from it? Or like we go off into that negative automatic thought spiral, as opposed to, it's not abruptly saying no. It is about saying, at the moment, I'm actually really busy. However, I could do that for you maybe next week. Or have you asked somebody else, who maybe have more time to be able to do that? I think what people like is solutions to issues. Not up to us to give them solutions. But if I asked you to do something and you said no to me, you weren't able to do it, I wouldn't give me a second thought. But you might be stuck with the guilt of going, I said no to Siobhan.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on something that we all need to address. It is important to say no, that's right, but saying no to the right things. And Ellen has just said there from Fairmont, learn to say no to the right things, but not miss opportunities.
Yeah.
I think one of the messages mentioned was reflection. If we look back on what we did well and what we didn't do so well, and then adapt on it. Yeah. So it's okay to say, I shouldn't have said no to that. I missed an opportunity, and then recognize the next time. Or I did say yes to that where I should have said no, and recognize it was the wrong thing. So it's being more self-aware, isn't it, really?
It is. And I think, we're now getting into using all the therapy talk. And I always, I see it very much tongue in cheek, but, it actually is. And I wish they taught this to secondary school leavers, in students, the fourth years, the third years, to understand how to communicate and to understand how themselves, that self-awareness. Not, I think it's kind of seen as either all very woo-woo or don't have time for it. I use a planner, a paper planner. So I use my phone, Google Calendar, because if something doesn't ping me to remind me, it means I'm trying to store too much information. But I use a paper planner. It's called a passion planner. I'm actually doing my own planner at the moment, which will be coming out in the next month or two. But based on this, at the end of every month, it has a double page for self-reflection. What did you do well? What did you not do so well? What can you learn from what happened, what you did? What changes can you bring from last month to the next month? And it's one of the reasons I love this, because it's not about just going, oh, I didn't do that, I'm a bad person, oh, I've messed everything up. It's all learning.
You mentioned the word learning, and I think I really would love to share this with everyone in the room just before we say goodbye to Siobhan and thank her for it. But being wrong, and it's an interesting one, we are scared of being wrong. It's educated into us. And I see Nicola said it should be covered in late secondary school on things we should cover. The problem is, as we grow up, we are thought to be scared to be wrong. And the easiest way I can explain this is the fantastic Ken Robinson. Since we mentioned TED Talks, and this is a very short snippet, and he speaks and addresses about the current education system that we have, where it is all aimed to getting into university. You know, learn this off. These are the right answers. Regurgitate them, you'll get your points. Have a look at this, and we'll have a quick chat, Siobhan, about what you just said there. This is Ken Robinson.
My contention is all kids have tremendous talents, and we squander them pretty ruthlessly. I had a great story recently, I love telling it, of a little girl who was in a drawing lesson. She was 6, and she was at the back drawing, and the teacher said this little girl hardly ever paid attention. And in this drawing lesson, she did. And the teacher was fascinated. She went over to her and she said, "What are you drawing?" And the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the girl said, "They will in a minute." Kids will take a chance. You know, if they don't know, they'll have a go. Am I right? They're not frightened of being wrong. Now, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong. And by the time they get to be adults, most kids have lost that capacity. They have become frightened of being wrong. And we run our companies this, by the way. We stigmatize mistakes. And we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is that we are educating people out of their creative capacities. If you think of it, the whole system of public education around the world is a protracted process of university entrance. And the consequence is that many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not, because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. And I think we can't afford to go on that way. Picasso once said this. He said that all children are born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. I believe this passionately, that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. Or rather, we get educated out of it. We have to be careful now that we use this gift wisely, and the only way we'll do it is by seeing our creative capacities for the richness they are, and seeing our children for the hope that they are. And our task is to educate their whole being so they can face this future. By the way, we may not see this future, but they will. And our job is to help them make something of it.
Amazing guy. And unfortunately, we lost him last year. He died in 2020. But the reason I wanted to show that, something you said resonated with me, Siobhan. If you ever look, and I see a lot of people looking after the kids at home in the chat here, kids don't burn out. They just get tired. They go to sleep, but they don't burn out the same level as we do. What I mean by that is stresses, you know, things that we would worry about that burns us out and causes us to get ill and to have serious problems, because we're afraid of being wrong. And we learn, or we should continue to learn, that it's okay to be wrong, to say no to somebody, and to declutter, as you said there yourself. Since the team is on TED Talks now, so we have another one there to show on this one. So I'm going to open it up. Any questions for Siobhan? It's okay. Let me see what we've got here. Let me see what we got. Yeah, Tara said, we don't call them mistakes in the house or amongst the team in the business. We call them learning experiences. It's really, really good. Yeah, being wrong is actually experience, as Stephen said. It's super. So any questions for Siobhan? A couple of ways to answer them. You can ask it straight in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand electronically. So under the participant list, click raise hand. We'll see you. We can unmute you and you can ask it live. But Siobhan, if we were to take a couple of takeaways from this morning, what would they be to sum up? So the 4 pillars you mentioned, a couple of pitfalls to look for, but to sum it up, what would be the things that you would advise somebody to advise against burnout and things that we can do to help ourselves?
Is, you know, self-care is the external stuff. Self-care is going for a walk with a friend, social distance, getting the takeaway coffee, and it's absolutely 100% needed. Social engagement, absolutely. But reframe self-care to self-kindness. How you talk to yourself from the minute you get up in the morning till the minute you go to bed at night. Because I guarantee you, there's not a huge amount of people who get into bed at night and say, job well done me. So every night, regardless of what you've done that day, burnt the dinner, didn't call somebody back, said no when you should have said yes, regardless, get into bed and say, job well done me for getting through the day. Because our language and the way we talk to ourselves is one of the biggest things, contributing factors I see to burnout, to exhaustion, disengagement, leading to depression on so many levels. So on top of minding your sleep, your nutrition doesn't mean don't have a drink or have a takeaway, but eat to fuel your body. Exercise is just getting out for a walk. I'm not sitting here saying jump around the place, but be mindful of how you talk to yourself, that inner dialogue. That's a big one.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you probably, if your chat's open for you, you can see so many people are actually saying thank you very much. And I've got a few private messages that they've popped in there as well. Saying, Siobhan, thank you. Very enlightening and a really good talk and a great reminder. So if you have people in gallery view, Siobhan, if you look around, you're getting a massive virtual applause at the moment. So I'm saying.